one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Wait, what?
No.
Mr. Alt?
Here.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Carson?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Polakowski?
Here.
Mrs. Rhodes? Here. Mrs. Smith? Here. Mrs. Love? Here. Citizens' comments?
Pat Walter.
Hi, my name is Pat Walter. I just want to thank Mrs. Rhodes and everyone that was involved in bringing the Rachel's Challenge to the school. I just loved it. It was very empowering, and I really can't say I enjoyed it because I cried through most of it. But I really loved the message. Thank you for bringing it here.
Student presentation.
At this time, I'm going to ask the board if we would please go sitting in the seats. Mrs. Berg and her class have a little presentation for us.
From the Geyer Theater started to meet with about 16 students from SMS and talk to them about putting on a few scenes from some different Christmas plays. Well, our Kate Kramer took it upon herself to instead write an original play for us to perform, a 33-page play, might I add, with stage directions for us to perform. So what you're going to see now is a very, very pared down version of just the beginning of that play, enough to make you want to come back Monday night to see the rest of it. Our students are going to be performing on December 21st for all of the kids at SMS, as well as the majority of the kids from SES that are going to walk over and visit. We'll also then be performing Monday the 17th at 6 p.m. So we hope that you can all come back to support our kids and view Kate Kramer's The Greatest Christmas Play Ever. Ready, kids?
It's wonderful, isn't it? You know, the season, Christmas. It's like the world is so much nicer, the air's so much cleaner, and the people so much better. Well, anyway, why are you here? Me? Yes. No, the other person sitting next to you. Oh, geez. Yes, you. What are you doing here?
Me, I'm actually waiting for rehearsal.
You? Rehearsal? I didn't see your name on the cast list.
Oh, I'm here now. Research.
that will not be happening.
What?
However, we will be performing a Christmas carol.
Yay.
Unfortunately, that won't be happening either.
What?
Due to some unforeseeable and of most quite unfortunate circumstances, we will be relying on the most useful tool of theater. The imagination.
But don't you care about classic literature? About the beauty hidden deep within the Nutcracker?
Honestly, I don't get paid enough to care about that. But we're certainly fighting for the theater program this year, as almost every art is against us. Yes, Zoe?
So does this mean no theater program?
Well, unless this play goes over well, yes. We just don't have the time for the arts nowadays.
And that's completely unfair.
Life's not fair.
Oh, whatever. I guess you're right. Not all of us get chosen by the teacher to be the lead in the school play.
Come on, students. If we all truly put our heads together and think, we'll come up with some astounding way to make this show go over well. Trust me on this. Oh, 5 minute break. I need to call my cat's dermatologist. Isn't there something we could do that doesn't involve my cat's tongue?
Well, is it true? That is why I asked you to play the lead?
Yes, but
But what?
I don't.
Well, look, I'm in charge of the script, so I think that...
So that means you can recast the play. Oh, and I've waited all year to be the lead, to be on stage, to...
At least I don't.
At least I don't get my fingers stuck in me. Leave that to me.
Thanks, Dad. I think I can go against a girl who named after a holiday myself.
My mom always said that whenever I look up at the ceiling, I'm in a holidays. Well, obviously, Ms. Y won't be back for a while, so why don't we get started on the script?
Well, I think we should start off with characters. Then we can start on the actual script. Like, what would we say? What would characters do? Motivations? You know? You guys feel?
Maria, it's okay. We'll figure it out.
No! We have 24 hours to...
What?
Huh? You guys didn't know? We have a day to put this thing together. Well, tonight and tomorrow. And then the show.
2 days?
2 days in the show. I think I practiced that night. For what? For, the club. Huh? Come on, you're wasting valuable time. Oh, yeah, of course. And it's a paper. We're writing our own script.
Like our own play? Can it be like that guy who wrote that musical about George Washington?
Huh? He wrote and starred in it.
It won like 40 million Tonys?
You mean Hamilton?
Yeah!
What do you get this to yourself?
I thought they were the same person for the longest time.
No way!
Truly, I thought he was on the $10 bill.
Which one?
Guys, 24 hours. That's all we have. I take it.
Didn't mean to upset you, High Mighty. Please forgive me.
Because I was cast in the league doesn't mean...
Just save it. You never show up until someone forces you to join.
Well, I found paper, but it was hidden under a lot of garbage. Does Miss Y live?
I was theater privileges strength.
Then why are you here?
I'm Miss Buck, and my mom wow. God, yeah. Well, we can start our ideas. What should our story be now?
Oh, well, it should be about Christmas. Yeah. No, listen, come on, some actual tangible ideas of like a theme, okay? Someone give me a theme. I said, someone give me a theme. Davey, yeah, an idea?
Yeah, someone mentioned a dress rehearsal where we all got hot chocolate and cookies, and I was wondering if that was a true statement.
I love that. I stand that. Not appropriate. You're not appropriate. We need to stay on track. So if you're not going to take this seriously, there's the door.
This one wants everything for it. remember what happened last Christmas?
Oh. Okay. Well, I like anything involving theater, but really, some of us actually care about this one. Well, let's actually think.
There has to be some idea that hasn't been done yet.
I really think not. This is a waste of time. Why don't we just choose some scene from the internet?
My mom doesn't connect my phone to the internet.
Holly, no one ever talks to you. Let's just say, Holly, look here. No one is talking to you.
Hey, don't be mean to Holly.
It's true. No one cares about what you have to say.
Maria, Ann, any ideas?
Nothing. Good news, students.
The play's back on.
No, we're going to be writing our own play.
That's what we've been doing.
Then do it even harder. Well, I must be off.
Off where?
It's of the utmost importance. I'll call Aaron's cellular device to check in, and I'll be here for rehearsal tomorrow. Good luck.
What's the play?
I know your ideas are just oozing out over the floor, so I'll leave you to it.
Wait!
So, now what?
Well, it seems like Miss Y is occupied. We don't have time to worry about her. Think of different Christmas ideas, the holiday.
Oh, geez, Holly, no one cares.
But I have good input.
Listen, we have nothing going for us. No good ideas, no good actors, nothing good. I don't fucking this stupid holiday. This is a corporate holiday made by money-hungry stores. Theater is stupid. This show is stupid. I hate this. I hate Christmas. I wish it never existed.
Surely you can't mean that. Seriously, Zach. Take a minute to think about what you're saying. You can't be angry most of all the time.
Well, some of us can, Noel. And listen, what is some cheery, happy Disney musical where we all hold hands and sing praise songs about how much we love each other? So let it go. Yeah, I know this while I'm at the door. I'll leave alone. Brooks maybe didn't talk to you when you come out to leave.
That was too dramatic, even for me. Poor guy. What caused him to break out? He always does this. Shouldn't you go after him? You two are friends after all. I don't get paid to deal with him during his tantrum.
Well, our show is in shambles. We don't have a script. Zach is mad at everyone in the world.
Who could be mad this time of year?
Apparently him. He can't help it.
He even yelled at Holly. Holly!
Well, why don't we teach him a lesson?
Huh?
A lesson. We'll teach him he can't have a negative attitude all the time. It may come back to bite him.
I don't understand. I was just about to say that.
Just follow my lead. It may even give us an idea for our play. Come here.
And cut.
You know what? You did a nice job.
I could never get up here and do that. Not with all them eyes looking back at me.
Oh, they're leaving. Great job, student. I thought they all left.
Ready? School board vacancy.
Be it resolved that the board accepts the resignation of board member Mike Bentz as the Southmoreland School Board Director with regrets and thanks him for his many years of selfless service to the Southmoreland School District and hereby declares the seat vacant.
Motion? Mrs. Rhodes, second?
Second.
Mr. Polakowski, roll call?
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith? Mrs. Love?
Yes, with regrets. Advertised vacancy.
Bear with me. The Southmoreland School Board hereby adopts the following deadlines and procedures as set forth below and sets January 10th, 2019 at 7 p.m. as a special voting meeting to vote to fill a vacancy in the office of Southmoreland School Director and advertise the same. There is a vacancy in the position of School Board Director of Southmoreland School District, and the school board will receive for each nominee seeking appointment, A, written letters of interest with or without a resume, and B, signed and completed statements of financial interest for the preceding calendar year as required by the Public Official and Employee Ethics Act for a nominee, all of which are to be mailed or delivered to the Superintendent's Office at 200 Scotty Way, Scottsdale, PA 15683, on or before 12 p.m. on December 28, 2018. The Secretary will then supply copies to all board members, and the board will consider as an agenda item voting on a replacement at a public voting meeting to be held on January 10, 2019, beginning at 7 p.m., which must be at least 10 days after deadline for receiving financial interest statements and within 30 days of acceptance of resignation, at which time the board will permit interested applicants the opportunity to publicly state their qualifications and/or positions for up to 5 minutes each before voting thereon. If a candidate receives a majority vote, he/she will be eligible to serve until the first Monday of December after the May 2019 municipal election, provided that it is more than 60 days since the vacancy shall have occurred. Being appointed by the school board does not include being placed on the May primary ballot for the 4-year position and in a separate political process as required by the Pennsylvania election law and not within the jurisdiction of the Board of School Directors. The Secretary is authorized and directed to notify the Board of Election of the existence of the below vacancy and advertise one time in the Daily Courier and Independent Observer and continuously on the Scotty Channel and on the Southmoreland website until the deadline for the submission of the documents described below. That notice of school board vacancy and special public voting meeting for a vacancy in the position of Southmoreland School Board Director to serve until the first Monday of December 2019 after the May 2019 municipal election, citizens of good moral character being a qualified elector, at least 18 years of age and a resident of the district for at least 1 year may seek but are not guaranteed to be a nominee by submitting written letters of interest with a resume and completed signed statements of financial interest for the preceding calendar year required by the Public Officials and Employee Ethics Act to be delivered to the Superintendent's Office at 200 Scotty Way, Scottsdale, PA 15683 on or before 12 p.m. on December 28, 2018. Office closed December 22nd through 27th. That's why the date was set. And will be permitted to speak on their qualifications and/or positions for up to 5 minutes at a public voting meeting to fill the vacancy on January 10th, 2019, beginning at 7 p.m. in the cafeteria of the middle school at the same address. Being appointed does not include being placed on May 2019 primary ballot for the new 4-year position that requires separate nomination process for election.
We need a motion to accept the resolution, correct? We need a motion to accept the resolution.
So moved.
Mr. Beistel, second. Mr. Fry. Roll call?
Mr.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Mrs. Smith? Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Incidental motion to approve method of voting.
Whereas Section 315 of the Public School Code permits the Board of School Directors to fill vacancy on the board by majority vote of the remaining members. Whereas neither the school code nor board policy specifically describes how nominations or motions for potentially multiple applicants, nominees in the State Ethics Act, are to be considered. Now therefore, as an incidental motion to the appointment of a qualified elector of the school district to the vacant position on the Board of School Directors, formerly held by Mike Bentz until the first Monday of December after the November 2019 municipal elections. Be it resolved that the Secretary will publicly announce the name of each person who has submitted his/her legally proper statement of financial interest or amended statement and letter of interest, and if necessary, the solicitor will rule therein. After hearing the presentations of the applicants seeking nomination and appointment who wish to speak for up to 5 minutes, who have timely submitted their legally proper statements of financial interest and letters of interest and/or qualifications in the chronological order in which they have been received, the board will proceed as follows. Option 1, which is simultaneously voting. The president will open the nominations, and any member may make a nomination, no second required, to appoint from the pool of the above qualified applicants a person to be voted on as a group simultaneously, along with any other applicant or applicants who also are nominated by a board member, and when members have stopped making nominations, the president will ask for a motion and second to close nominations, and if closed, then during the roll call, each member will publicly announce his/her vote for one of those nominees to be appointed. If a nominee does not receive a majority of the remaining members, here 5 affirmative votes, then the president will again open nominations as above in another roll call vote, and if no one receives 5 votes, then continue through the same cycle unless a candidate publicly announces his/her decision to withdraw his/her name from consideration, and so on for subsequent rounds of nominations and voting until either a nominee receives the majority of the remaining members, here 5 votes, or a motion is made and seconded and approved to recess for 10 minutes, or a motion to table and then resume nominating and voting as above, or a motion is made, seconded, and approved to declare deadlock and cease voting on the appointment. Or, option 2, separate voting, multiple rounds. The president will recognize a member who moves the appointment of an applicant from the pool of qualified applicants, and if seconded, the board will immediately vote on that person. If that person receives five votes, he/she is successful appointed. If the vote fails, the president will then recognize a member who moves the appointment of another applicant from the pool of qualified applicants, and if seconded, the board will immediately vote on that person. That process will continue until there is no motion second for anyone from the pool of applicants who has not previously been voted on to that point. When there are no further motions and seconds for an applicant who has not already been voted on, the president will inquire if any applicant wishes to publicly withdraw his/her name from consideration. Then proceed on subsequent motions and seconds for one applicant at a time to be voted on until either an applicant receives 5 votes, or a motion is made and seconded and approved to recess for 10 minutes, or a motion to table and then resume voting, or a motion is made and seconded and approved to declare deadlock and cease voting on the appointment.
Option 1 was what we did in the last vacancy.
Any questions for Dave?
So if you make the motion, you have to pick either option 1 or option 2. Correct?
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Make
Do-
a motion that we accept option 1. As we've previously done that, I think that's the way we should go.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Minutes, approval of minutes?
The board will be asked to consider the approval of the October 18, 2018 voting meeting and November 8, 2018 discussion meeting and then the November 15, 2018 voting meeting.
A motion? Mr. Fry, second? Mr. Carson, roll call?
Voice vote.
Oh, sorry. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Accounts, general check funds summary.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of the November 2018 general fund check summary.
Motion? Mrs. Smith made the motion. Will you second?
Yeah.
Mrs. Rhodes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Roll call.
No, this is-
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Fry? Yes. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Treasurer's report.
The board is asked to consider the approval of the November 2018 treasury report.
Motion?
So be it.
Mr. Beisel, second.
Second.
Mr. Polakowski. Roll call, please.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
November 2018 General Fund Board Operating Summary Report.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of November 2018 General Fund Board Operating Summary Report.
Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Polakowski, second. Mrs. Smith. Roll call.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Board reports. The students aren't here. Superintendent report.
I have attached on the board docs a reminder again for the PSBA Act 55 required training. I strongly encourage everyone to take advantage of that. And once again, I can't log in because I am not an active board member, but I will gladly sit down and work with Annie and all of you if you want to come in and we can work on that. I know. With the holiday season coming up, I know that's going to probably be a crunch, but once again, I will avail myself to help anyone. Just a couple other quick things. I want to recognize the primary center, the Southmoreland Primary Center. Mr. Clara had submitted to the All Things PLC. Southmoreland Primary Center was once again recognized as a model PLC school, and they are eligible to apply for the DeFore Award. So congratulations to the primary center there. Last week, Mr. Miswall had lead testing done in all our buildings. That would include all the schools and Ruffsdale. I have the results. They will be posted on the website for people to look at. Next week, we are also going to be having radon testing to be done in all our schools. So once those results are also submitted, I will have those posted. I just want to give the board a quick summary of some of the activity that happened this week. On Monday, I spent most of the day meeting with the administrative team and our building finance secretaries. We took a very close look at our current budget status, what our operating expenses are to this point, any place where we might be able to reduce spending, and obviously we're going to put that in check. We've devoted a concerted amount of effort in trying to identify areas that we could potentially make some cutbacks, but in turn, we have also identified some areas that we're going to need to look at and possibly in the future for some increases. One of the things, I am an educational leader, and I do feel my responsibility. We as a district have not had a textbook adoption probably for 8 years. We currently have students that are using way out of date content, and I think we really need to start looking. I know with all the budget crunches and everything that are occurring, the immediacy of our situation is there, but I'm going to strongly advocate that we need to start looking at a 2, 3, 4, 5 year plan moving forward, because we just don't want to always be playing catch up in our situation. We also have to be looking for the continuance of our schools. We have striven to do very well, and we have been very successfully academically, and the results have been posted by the state, and I will be sharing that information with you down the line. But our schools are continually doing well, but I have grave concerns about how well we will be doing in the future if we don't look to making some modifications or at least improvements to our current curriculum. It is grossly outdated. We have students in the elementary school, we can't even, or primary center, we can't even find the curriculum to go along with the textbooks that we're currently using. So I'm throwing that out there just as a reminder to the board and to the public that we need to start looking at a long-range plan versus a short-term. On Tuesday, I also met with all the departments. That would be the maintenance, transportation, athletic, student pupil services, and once again, we evaluated our current budget situation and looked at areas that we might be able to trim or cut back. We're also looking into projecting some of the expenses for next year. So I just want to assure the board that we are making, from the administrative side, all efforts whatsoever to take a look at the total picture of our district, and we're thinking outside of the box of areas where we might be able to make some movement or some improvements in at least trying to get us through this difficult time. That is my report. Any questions?
Yeah, Vince. I don't know if any board members know this. When did we get off that textbook program? Was it whenever we started the first purchase of those Chromebooks?
No, I actually,
before that.
I think it was before that. I've been here probably 10 years now, and I think the last textbook adoption was when I was at the high school dean of students, so that was before I even became
it's been a
principal at the middle school. So it's probably been 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
You know, and to further complicate matters, we sat down with the technology department, Mr. Pushkar, and we're quickly coming to the point, because of the obsolescence of our machines and the operating systems. We're coming to a point where a lot of our technology is obsolete, and we're going to be looking to have to try to find some way of cycling that. Now Mr. Clara, and working with Mr. Pushkar, is currently looking at a grant that's coming through the Pennsylvania Department of Ed, and we're looking at all avenues. Hopefully we can find some monies there, but I just want to really put it out there that we're maintaining our quality of education, but we're coming to a point where a lot of the things are becoming outdated.
Are you talking textbooks for every grade?
No, we're really in dire need right now of a math series. So if there would be a way that we could at least start looking at some type of cycle, whether or not it's a K through 5, whatever, K through 8, the high school obviously is going to be a different situation because their textbooks are so specific, and they're almost like a college textbook. They cost a fortune, just a lot of the high school books. So we're trying to explore what would be best to get us through the situation. Obviously we're still out there looking for free resources. The state still has some stuff that we're using, but I mean, we're coming to a point where the content's just not there, and we're going to need to do something.
Can you come to us with some?
Yes.
Okay.
Working with the administrative team, we are going to be contacting some of the textbook companies. In the past, it was a lot cheaper to receive the book of that content. Now everything is basically in electronic format, because once the book is printed, just for instance, let's just say it was a geography book. Once a geography book is printed, we know that with the current changes in the world today, that book is almost obsolete by the time we get it in our hands. So a lot of the textbook companies now are moving to an electronic format, because they now own the intellectual rights to that, and they can update that content as appropriate. So we'll probably be looking at a lot more electronic content, which could then result in a little bit more usage of the electronics. So once again, I just want to be the devil's advocate. I want to be put it out there that somewhere along the lines we have to start looking for a long-term solution to our problems and start thinking about that. Yes, Mr.
Just to follow up, not only in the textbooks, but I think we need to start listening to the teachers who have been complaining for years about this exact situation. If we would have paid attention to what they needed a number of years ago, we wouldn't be all jammed up at all these levels right now. So we need to start listening when they say, we need this. Some of these books are so outdated, they're 8 and 10 years old. We need to pay attention to them.
Yes, sir. And we've even tried to limp by. We've taken a lot of our books to binding processes, but we're even to the point where you can only put a Band-Aid on for so long, and then it just doesn't work anymore. So you're right. The teachers, I do want to listen to what they say. Once again, I have to temper that, because there are still resources out there that we have to take advantage of. But I do want to just impress upon everyone that we're coming to the point where we're really going to need to look at the long-range plan, and that is going to be the effort of my team. Trying to develop some type of strategic plan where we can take a look multiple years out and come up with a viable plan that at least is palatable to everyone.
Is there some type of like a roundabout ballpark number what something like this costs?
Most generally, if you want to look at a K through, and once again, please don't hold me to this, but most generally a textbook adoption series runs around $300,000. No, and that, once again, that's going to be dependent upon whether or not the electronic content, how that's, because things have changed since the last time we have looked into that. A lot of times they give you the book as a free resource because, it's really, it's not, I don't want to say significant, but the electronic end of it's more important. And that is probably another reason why the administration has been pushing the electronic policy, updating it at the high school. We're going to be voting on that later on, allowing students to bring in their own devices, because we might not have the means to be able to provide the devices for everyone, but if the students start bringing their own, we could be able to set a license out to those students and then issue that license to the students and then not have to worry about the technology on that end. So we're looking at all avenues, trying to figure out the best possible solution to this.
Is there anywhere to buy used ones then?
The problem with, we were looking even at the primary center. No, the 8 years out, the content is just.
Yeah, I mean, if we could get something selling there, 4 years old, or one that's as old as ours,
We-
upgrade.
We have books that probably came from series that are relatively new. We've even reached out to companies that will buy used textbooks, and they won't even buy them anymore. So I promise you that we will be looking at all avenues to try to figure out the best way of finding a solution, and hopefully we will come to the table. You know, I was always told to identify a problem, but at least come with a possible solution, and we're going to try to present a possible solution to how we can maneuver this situation. So, thank you. Sorry to take so long.
You're allowed. Business manager report.
Yeah. On the board summary report that you approved earlier, I made some notations. You might have noticed them when you were reviewing them. Interesting to note, the board and administration made significant cuts for this new school year, the current operating budget. And I look at these reports all the time, but I made some notations just so that you could look at page 8 if you want to of the board summary report. But through November, the end of November, we have expended $9,474,000. $9,474,000. And if you look at the prior 3 years through November 30th of 17, now some years are not easily comparable because last year we had that guaranteed energy savings project, which consumed nearly $1 million. But anyway, last year through November, we expended $13,815,000. 2 years ago, as of November 30th of 2016, we expended $11,992,000. And 3 years ago, through November 30th, 2015, we expended $11,236,000. So, compared to 3 years ago, we've expended nearly $1.8 million less through November 30th. Year to date, we've expended 31% of our operating budget, which is the best when you compare to the previous 3 years. So your cuts have taken effect. You significantly reduced the potential operating deficit. Similar kind of story with the revenues. On page 11 of the revenue summary, I made similar notations. Year to date, we have received $14,498,000. We've received to date 48% of our general fund revenues. Last year, at that point, November 30, 2017, we had received $15,097,000, or 51% of our operating revenues. 2 years ago, as of November 30, 2016, we received less than current year, $13,498,000, or 47% of our revenue received. And going back to 15, November 30th of 15, we had received up to that point $9,209,000, or 34% of our money. But I put an asterisk there just so that we can all recall that was the year of the state budget impasse. So that makes making comparisons difficult. You need to know about the circumstances. And during that particular year, 3 years ago, the legislature and the governor approved what we called the 3/4 budget. So right before New Year's Eve, somewhere around there, December 28th, they released a big chunk of money. And then they finished their budget process in March of 2016. So just to let you know, I think we're operating very well, both on the expenditure side and on the revenue side.
Just on that one summary there, is there any one particular item or reason why we're $500,000 shorter than we were last year at this time when it was $15 million versus $14 million this year in revenue?
That's a very good question, and I should have looked at that in particular, and I apologize for not doing that. I'm trying to think, is there anything off the top of my head? Could be a timing of revenues. I'll get back to you on that, and I will get you an explanation for that. Probably something very apparent and is just not coming to ahead. And to look at the expenditure side, noting that we are expending far less funds than we have at November 30th in prior years, I did a run of our purchase orders produced. Actually, I ran this report till December 11th, a couple days ago. So from July 1st to December 11th, we have cut 633 purchase orders. Now that's purchase orders for stuff, services and stuff. So it's nothing to do with payroll and benefits. So that's a total of $591,000. Last year, July 1st of 17 through December 11th of 2017, we had cut 985 purchase orders. So that's 353 less purchase orders. And last year, through December 11, 2017, that total of purchase orders totaled $1,016,000. So again, there were significant cuts made in the operating budget, and you can see it in that regards, comparing purchase orders. Looking at checks issued. Checks issued and the transfers of monies between accounts. So some of these numbers are not comparable with the expenditure report, because some of this would be perhaps double counting of money moving between funds. But I like to look at the checks being issued, because that pretty much corresponds close to the significant reduction in purchase orders issued to vendors. Through December 10th, we have cut actual checks 719. Now through the same date ending December 10th of 2017, we had cut 1,016 checks. So 298 less general fund checks. Okay? And of course, from your expenditure to date report, and I ran it through December 10th. This report here, the summary, was for the month ending November, but going through December 10th, we had expended $10,598,000 in the general fund. So that's everything combined. Salaries, benefits, and stuff, services, purchase orders for goods and all that. Same time last year, December 10th of 2017, we had expended $13,315,000. Now part of that was the nearly $1 million for the Johnson Controls Guaranteed Energy Savings Project. So if you pull them out of that number, we've expended $1.7 million less. So the budget cuts are for real. And that's cash savings. So the auditor and I finished closing the books for the general fund, and he closed the books for the cafeteria fund. He will be issuing his full-blown audit report. Maybe we'll receive it before the end of this month. So I won't steal any of his report. I know we'll invite him in like we did for the 16-17 report to give you his summary. For the just generally speaking, borrowing some of the final numbers, June 29th of 2017, we approved the general fund budget for the 17-18 school year. We had estimated revenues. And I made a copy of my summary that I give to the school board. $29,349,916. We booked revenues for the 17-18 school year, $29,494,014. So we came out to the positive $144,098. Pretty darn close. That's 0.5% within the budget. So. Either we had very good sharp pencils, and we were forecasting very well. Expenditures, we had budgeted expenditures of $32,325,067. We closed the books. Our actual expenditures booked for last year, $31,550,531. So we expended $774,536 less than we had budgeted. That's a positive variance of 2.4%. So taking the two together, our budgeted deficit between revenues and expenditures was a negative $2,975,151. Our actual deficit was $2,056,547, a positive variance of $918,604. Now, part of that deficit last year was, you always have to remember, within our expenditure numbers are the planned expenditures of some of our fund balances. For example, for last year, we had committed budget-wise $1,173,804 from fund balances, $42,000 from the committed fund balance for the old ERIPS, the $931 or so thousand for the Guaranteed Energy Savings Project, and a few dollars. We did a project in the high school gymnasium, the safety banisters, and of course we always have that built-in $100,000 budgetary reserve if we need it. So you add those back in. Last year we had a planned budgeted operating deficit of $1,801,347. Now, looking at the actual numbers that are booked, you know, our full deficit was only $2,056,547. We used that $931,804 from assigned fund balances for the Guaranteed Energy Savings Project, the $42 million from the committed money for the old ERIPS. And of course, we didn't touch that $100,000 budgetary reserve, and we had that minor project in the high school that we used assigned fund balances for. So our actual operating deficit for last year was $970,743. So did we have an operating deficit? Yes. Was it better than forecasted? Absolutely, by $830,000. So you made significant budget cuts this year. So when you approve this budget that we're in, the 2018-2019 budget, we had budgeted significantly reduced expenditures, $30,565,385. Budgeted revenues, $30,200,014, for a total deficit of $365,371. So when you look at that total planned deficit versus the planned deficit from a year before, $2,975,000, you took a significant cut from that. Good job. And of course, for this year, we planned on using the $42,000 for the old ERIPS, and we have that $100,000 budgetary reserve. So our operating deficit this year, budgeted deficit, was $223,371. So you compare this budgeted operating deficit with last year, which was a negative $1,800,000. So you know you've cut the planned expenditures by $1.6 million. So you certainly did a good job, everyone working together, putting together a significant series of cuts and some revenue adjustments to get the fiscal ship back on course. So I just wanted to give you that good news. At least it's good news from my standpoint, fiscal standpoint. So that's about it. I didn't want to take any more time than that. And if you have significant questions beside that one, think about it and send them to Mr. Masha, and I'll make sure I answer them. Merry Christmas.
I would like to make one statement about the reduction in our expenditures. I have asked the administrative team to work with the faculty, and I want to recognize the effort of our teachers. They have been very willingly working with us to reduce the expenditures to the point where we are right now. 31% of our current expenditures to this point in time. And I think a lot of that is due to the willingness of our teachers to work. I think they really understand the significance of this situation, and they're willing to make the efforts to work with the administration and the board in trying to do what is best for the district. So I commend our teachers and our administrators and you, the board, for everything that we're trying to do to get this district rectified.
And we are on course to prepare that first draft budget that will eventually culminate next month into that legal terminology. Is it proposed preliminary budget or is it preliminary proposed budget? whatever the state, proposed preliminary budget. So you know, we're crafting that first draft that we'll look at internally and then present it to you, and whatever modifications need to be made, we'll turn it into that legal proposed preliminary budget to keep us on track to do an Act 1 budget according to the legal timelines that Mr. Patonik has gone over with us in great detail. And I think there's a resolution coming up regarding the board meetings that need to take place. So I want to thank you for pushing us to do that. I think getting the budget to you folks much earlier than we have, whether you decide to continue on the Act 1 or by the end of January opt out, and again, that's your decision to make, and we can certainly talk about that. I think it's good. Now, just one thing to remember when we go over that first draft, that again, it's a very early first draft numbers, so again, as we work through the winter and into the spring, numbers will get sharpened and come into focus as more details come to light. I'm sorry, that's it.
For the next month's board meeting, I will also have some information concerning the mid-pen banking situation. Currently, right now, I do not believe that they are living up to the agreement in which they initially approached. I believe the administration and the board last year. We're having a number of concerns and problems with that, and I will detail that more next month. But I do believe that it needs to be noted that currently, right now, we are not satisfied with our banking situation. They are not living up to what they have agreed.
Solicitor information, are we going to?
Four things I want to mention briefly. Number one, I received a notice last week after we had our reorganization meeting, notifying solicitors of the taxing districts that Seritage KMT Finance, which is the entity that owns the two larger parcels that used to make up the Kmart Plaza, filed a, quote, motion for leave to file a property tax assessment appeal, nunc pro tunc, which means now for then, or a reason why they're filing it late, to be presented tomorrow morning before Judge Marsili at 9 a.m. And I would propose to talk to you in executive session about that concerning parcels 4714-000-154 and same number ending in 160. As to a little bit more information about that and a plan of action, and I've also supplied you with a proposed resolution. Item number 2 is that you have on your agenda the invoice from Johnson Controls, and I did look at that contract, and my memory of it was that that you were obligating yourselves for 3 years, and after the 3 years, it was your option about whether or not to continue the annual maintenance service payment and receiving the evaluations as to how well the calculations are coming as to what was promised. So my advice to you is that you're contractually bound to make that invoice payment. Next item is that I did prepare a resolution farther down the agenda that goes into greater detail about scheduling and then advertising for the January meetings. January 10th, you would be getting some preliminary information, and then January 17th, having a draft proposed preliminary budget, and using that as a voting meeting to add, subtract, multiply, divide, whatever you want to do with that. And then also on the 24th to have the meeting to post the proposed preliminary budget or opt out. and then continuing on in February 14th. If you continue on with the process, that would be on February 14th. On the 24th, though, you would be approving a special notice and advertisement. It's not included in this bunch. And then there's one more item that I would like to talk with you briefly in executive session before you vote on it, about purchasing a small strip of ground, approximately 30 feet by 130 feet in Roughdale, adjacent to the Roughdale school properties. That concludes my report.
I have no report for the WIU. CWCTC report?
Yes, I have a couple things from the Mrs. Lipinetti, business manager. Preliminary budget, the 1920 preliminary budget is underway. Staff has submitted their budgets for equipment and are working on their supply budgets along with their items to bid. Budget analysis, as of the first quarter of 18-19, 30% of the budget has been expensed. Mrs. Lipinetti will provide a performance report at the February 2019 meeting that will cover the first 6 months of the school year. Superintendents and business managers were emailed a copy of the school's audit report. I have it here if anybody wants to look at CWCT's audit report. Also, I know Dave talked about our performance contract and value report from Johnson Controls. Well, the VOTEC has one also. This is their third year of doing one. Their savings is $116,232. I think ours was $53,000. Is that what it is? And this project was a $6.5 million project. So, what was ours, Jim? 1.2 or 3?
1,331,000.
Yeah. So,
well, the work they did there was very extensive.
yeah.
I remember that presentation from back in late May of 2013 when you know, the operating board and Johnson Controls went over all the plant work. So it was,
Yeah, it was
very
a big deal to get
extensive.
that. So I have a copy of it here if anybody wants to compare theirs to ours and whatever. Also, Mr. Elwood, administrator out there, I talked to you guys maybe 3 or 4 months ago about an access road going to the turnpike. So good news is the PA Turnpike is going to do that for free. That's going to start whenever the weather breaks, April, May, maybe. So that's good news for that. What else? Mark Long, special ed coordinator. That new program that I talked about is going to start in January. So we have some prospective students and that alternative ed program. We're glad to see that get underway. I think that's it.
I recommend, like, for our next meeting, we have a formal motion where we accept their audit report, since we're a member of the operating group, as a formality that we've received and accepted. They received a clean opinion.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion. It's board's discretion.
We also retained Andrews and Price as our solicitors. They've been with CWCT for over 20 years. There was an increase in the hourly rate from 90 to 110. That's 20-some% increase. That was discussed a little bit, but since they've been there and we like what they do, we stuck with them. And I think nobody could remember when the last increase was, so they said 5 or 6 years was the last time they increased the hourly rate. That concludes my report.
Thank you. PSBA?
Yeah, just a little bit. State lawmakers were already looking ahead to difficult budget discussions, even though there are 6 months left in the fiscal year. Budget Secretary Randy Albright said, quote, year to date, tax collections through the end of November are now 8.2% or more, and that would be about $900 million above the prior year's collections. But he said, that was end quote, but he said his projections, he's projecting higher than expected spending on human services due to largely the federal government mandating costs. Supplemental funding next year would have to cover the difference. So, and Governor Wolf will announce his official budget goals for next year in February. And Albright hinted that the administration may look at charging fees for some state police coverage. However, the GOP-controlled legislators say they want to live within the current revenue structure and is not looking to raise any new taxes or fees. So that's about all I have for right now.
Anti-bullying committee report?
And we'll just dovetail right into that. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mrs. Walters for her kind words, but I want to thank the board, the administration, teachers and staff, and because they did all the hard work that it required to bring Rachel's Challenge here to Southmoreland. And it was well received. I don't know if any of you were able to attend the evening session. I attended one morning session and an evening session. The morning session, I knew what to expect because I had seen the program before. But I was really surprised that it really did touch the kids. The teachers were going around handing out Kleenex. So it was a very emotional and it was very powerful presentation. And it was well received by the students and the public, and I've already had some positive feedback. And as far as the anti-bullying committee, we will be continuing to meet probably on a monthly basis during the school year, because we want that chain reaction of kindness to continue for years to come here at Southmoreland. So that concludes my report for both.
Thank you. School Safety Committee report? Can I have a motion to recess for executive session for multiple things?
The reasons I aligned in personnel also.
Second? Mrs. Smith, all in favor?
All right.
Second? All in favor? Opposed? I don't have to announce old business because we don't have any, right? Okay, new business, ERIP 2019 plan.
This plan shall be known as Southmoreland School District Early Retirement Incentive Plan for Teachers 2019, or ERIP, or the plan. Class of potential eligible employees. Class defined. The class of employees of Southmoreland School District to whom this is being offered are those professional employees included in the bargaining unit of the Southmoreland Educational Association as certified and determined under the provisions of PAPERA decision at PERA-R-445-W, April 22nd, 1971, commonly referred to as teachers, but regardless of whether they are teachers, librarians, or school nurses or other professional employees included in that bargaining unit, and hereinafter referred to as teachers or retirees who also meet the other criteria of this plan. Minimum number of participants required. The plan will only be effective upon meeting or exceeding the following minimum number of participants. 6. If the minimum number of participants is not reached, the Board of School Directors shall have the right to refuse all the notices of retirement, and the plan will not be effective, and any employee who subsequently wants to retire without the benefits of this plan may do so by submitting a new notice for retirement or resignation. Age and years of service. In addition to Section 2, the teacher must A, have a minimum of 15 years of continuous service in the school district with no minimum age requirement, and have at least 15 years of service in the public school employees retirement system known as PESERS with no minimum age requirement. A year of service is used herein means completion of at least 80% of the year of school service as a school employee for which the required contributions have been made pursuant to the Public School Employee Retirement Code 24 PA CSA 8101. But if less than 80%, there shall be no eligibility. Retirement. In addition to the above sections, the teacher must retire from his/her position by delivering a signed and dated letter with notice of retirement and waiver of said retirement to the Office of Superintendent, Southmoreland School District by January 31st, 2019 at 3 p.m. local prevailing time, to be effective no later than June 30th, 2019, and say that they are electing to participate in the plan in the form of a signed notice of retirement and waiver. The form of the notice of retirement letter and waiver shall be in the form approved by the solicitor and shall be sent by the superintendent to all the necessary teachers. After the effective date of retirement, the teacher retiree will then cease to be a school employee. This incentive shall be in effect for a closed window period from its approval by the school board only through the above date and not for any subsequent period of time. Section 403B plan, the payment by the employer shall be cash payment made only into an Internal Revenue Code Section 403B plan which the district has established for its employees and will be non-elective contribution as defined in the Internal Revenue Code. The teacher will not have the ability to receive the payment directly from the school district or be entitled to receive any other retirement benefits from the school district except what is provided in the current collective bargaining agreement. There may be a minimum waiting period estimated at 30 days required by the plan administrator or the investment company before the retiree teacher may withdraw the money. An eligible retiree may need to establish their individual account through the plan administrator and elect the type of investment from those available by June 30th, 2019. The employee is notified and understands that employees' withdrawal of money from the 403B plan results in income tax being due. Remuneration. The payment made by the Southmoreland School District will be $14,000 per year for 6 consecutive years, beginning with the 2019-2020 school fiscal year, with the payment into the 403B plan from the first year due no later than August 15, 2019, for the eligible teacher retirees who retire as set forth herein. After the first year, the district will make its payment into the 403B plan on or before the first payroll day of July for each year. There will be no payment due from the employer for a teacher retiree remaining in the plan subsequent to the calendar year in which the teacher retiree died. Payment for a retiree who dies prior to the payment due date will be determined in accordance with the IRS regulations in effect. Maintaining eligibility. Any person submitting his or her notice of retirement under the plan may not rescind it after the expiration of 7 calendar days of submitting it and must remain in employment with the district through the end of the 2019-2020 school year. Notice. Any potentially eligible retiree who wants to...
It's a mistake, I just realized that it should be 2018-2019.
Okay, so let's amend that. That would be the district through the end of the 2018-2019 school year. Please note that. Any potentially eligible retiree who wants to consider this plan and participate in it should consult with an attorney and a financial advisor of their own choosing before submitting his or her retirement notice. This plan is not intended to provide tax or financial planning or legal advice. If any person is already making or will make an elective deferral into the 403B plan in the same calendar year as his or her participation in this plan, she should determine the limits for federal tax-free payments into the plan for that year. There are no promises expressed or implied beyond the face of the plan.
Should you read that again with the corrected years?
No. please note once again that that was a corrected years. Can we?
We have to have discussion from,
Invite, if anyone from the public wants to speak to the issue.
does anybody from the public want to speak to the issue? Can we have a motion? Mrs. Rhodes, second. Mr. Beistel. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Mr. Alt?
After our discussions and seeing the potential for substantial savings over the next 6 years, I vote yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Love?
Yes.
8 yes. No, eight all.
You want to know?
No.
Resolution to approve ERIP 2019? Or should that be 2018?
It's 1819, that's what you just did.
Oh, okay. Johnson Controls Performance Contracting Value Report?
Wait.
No, wait, no.
We still have to read the resolution, don't we?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Yeah, you should have read the resolution. That's the plan.
That was a plan. We still have to read the resolution,
Yes.
correct?
Do you have any reason why you picked the first?
Not that I'm relishing reading another 3 pages. but-
This is only one.
See, these are not issued through payroll.
Okay, we ready?
Wait a minute, hold on a second.
Hold on.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, if there's a problem with it, let's fix it now. What date do you want?
I would prefer on or before July 15th. These checks are not cut through the payroll system.
Oh, okay, all right.
They're not taxable, so. And the only problem with first payroll in July, since we pay every 2 weeks, you might have a pay date in July that might start on July 1st down the road.
So,
But you know what, I don't want to complicate the matter.
Okay, so just, we need a motion to
Just let it
accept
go.
an amendment for it to be in the out years after the first. The first year is going to be on or before August 15th. Is that okay?
Well, that would be good.
Okay. Subsequent years, on or before, be on the first, no, on or before July 15th.
Yes.
So we need a motion to amend it for the payment to be,
Well, actually, you're just amending this plan.
The plan
Which
for
is
that
not the
one date.
resolution, this is the resolution.
okay, so do we still need a motion to amend the plan?
Yeah.
Can we have a motion to amend the plan?
Yeah, I make that motion.
Mr. Alt. Mr. Beistel.
Anybody from the public?
Roll call?
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith? Yes. Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Everyone voting yes. 8 yes.
Is he ready?
That changes.
He is ready.
Number 6. What change? Number 6?
yes.
To
The first payment is on or before July, or August 15th, and then the subsequent years are on or before July 15th. Okay.
Resolution. Whereas the administration has obtained consent from the Southmoreland Education Association to offer an early retirement incentive plan to teachers, whereas it requires at least 52 days plus preparation time to comply with the requirements of law to obtain a waiver from potential retirees. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of School Directors of Southmoreland School District does hereby approve offering the early retirement incentive plan for teachers 2019, providing for the payment of $14,000 per year for 6 years to individuals meeting the requirements of the plan, providing that the following minimum number of eligible participants submit notice of retirement, which would be 6. The closed window of availability of the plans shall be for a period beginning upon the passage of this resolution and ending on January 31st, 2019 at 3 p.m., by which point any retiree must have submitted their notice of retirement and waiver in the form approved by the solicitor. The board hereby adopts the plan, which is attached hereto and incorporated by reference as is fully set forth herein. Superintendent is authorized and directed to forward a letter notifying teachers of the plan, a complete copy of the plan, in the form of the retiree's notice of retirement and waiver.
Do we have a motion? Or do I have to open it to discussion from the floor?
Oh, you need a motion first.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Carson, second. Mr. Beistel?
Any comment from?
Any comment from the public? Roll call.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
All members voting yes. 8 members.
Johnson Controls Performance Contracting Value Report.
The report is attached. The board is asked to consider year 2 of the performance contracting savings with Johnson Control at a cost of $7,880. The cost for year 3 for...
Yeah, sure. It's okay.
Pardon? The cost for year 3 for informational purposes will be $8,116.
Mr. Pachonic let me know that we are contractually obligated to
Hey, they haven't tell us how good we're doing.
And why are we
Something you're doing.
voting on it if we're already under contract and we voted for this last year?
It's not in the budget.
Make the motion.
Did you? Okay. Roll call.
Was that Mr. Beistel or Mr.
Mr.
Alt?
Polakowski made the motion,
Right.
and Mr. Beistel seconded
Okay.
it.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries. All 8 yes.
Policy 237, use of electronic devices.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of Policy 237, use of electronic devices. This policy has been posted for 30 days.
Motion? Second? Mrs. Smith? Roll call?
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Alt?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries. 8 all.
Acquire a portion of street at Ruffsdale Building.
Okay, Dave, you said you were going to read it.
You're up.
Resolution to approve purchase of portion of unnamed street in the village of Rossdale. Be it resolved that the solicitor is authorized to prepare and the president to execute and the secretary to attest to an agreement of sale for the purchase of the real estate described below by Southmoreland School District, hereinafter Southmoreland, from Kenneth L. Colbert and Linda S. Colbert, husband and wife, hereinafter sellers, and for the following terms. Number 1, all their interest in the unnamed 30-foot street of the unrecorded Samuel Boyer plan of lots for the area which adjoins 2 sides of Lot 1 from the boundary of Lot 1 to the boundary of Southmoreland School District for the length of the easterly boundary of Southmoreland School District property as far as it adjoins the same and described as Tract 3rd in Deed Book Volume 2282, page 535, and thence along that portion of the length of the easterly boundary of Southmoreland property described in Tract 2nd in Deed Book Volume 2282, page 535, along the same unnamed 30-foot street to a point opposite the boundary line between Lot 1 and 2 of said plan. Said boundary line believed to meet and be the terminal point of a missing column, the description in the deed from Samuel Boyer et al. to B.F. Schaefer, recorded in Westmoreland Deed Book Volume 116, page 384, and all subsequent deeds in the chain of title of sellers. Under and subject to the rights of ingress, egress, and regress, if any, of other owners of lots in the unrecorded plan of lots of Samuel Boyer. Number 2, the sales price is $100. The Southmoreland paying all closing costs for deed preparation, $140, settlement fee of $200, recording fee of about $149.25, notary fees of $10, and title search and insurance not to exceed $1,000. And costs and fees for preparation of and obtaining subdivision approval, if required by East Huntington Township, about $150, and recording thereof, about $69. Not stated herein, there would also be 2% transfer tax based upon the assessed pro rata portion of the land, not the building. So that should be added. For subdivision of the seller's interest in that portion of the unnamed 30-foot street described above. Deed shall be by deed of special warranty, closing on or before February 28, 2019. Funds for the above shall be transferred from the account budgetary reserve number, which Mr.
5900-800.
And the treasurer is authorized to expend funds as set forth above upon presentation of documentation by the solicitor evidencing the need therefore.
Do we have a motion? Mrs. Rhodes, second. Mr. Fry.
You need public comment because I think it was in board doc.
Any public comment? Roll call.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith? Yes. Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
All 8 members voting yes.
Oppose appeal of tax assessment.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Southmoreland Board of School Directors authorizes and directs the solicitor to oppose and defend in court against an appeal nunc pro tunc by the taxpayer, including the motion for leave to file property, assessment appeals nunc pro tunc now for then, and if the motion is granted, then the appeal on the merits, whether in common pleas court or the Board of Assessment Appeals.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Polakowski, second.
Second.
Mr. Carson? Do I need volume?
No, this was
Okay.
public.
Roll call.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith? Yes. Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
All 8 members voting yes.
Placement of student in educational emotional support services in Bell Vernon School District.
It is recommended the board consider the approval of the placement of a student in educational emotional support service in the Bell Vernon School District at a cost of $10,312.65.
Motion? Mr. Fry, second. Mrs. Smith? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Mr. Earl?
No.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Motion carries 7, 1 no.
Resolution to advertise notice of meetings.
Be it resolved that the Southmoreland School Board authorizes and directs the Secretary to advertise once in the designated newspaper of general circulation, post in the buildings, and notify any news organization who requests notification, and the Treasurer is authorized and directed to pay therefore, and the Board approves the following notice of meetings related to the 2019-2020 General Fund Budget. Notice: it is hereby given that the Southmoreland School Board sets the following meetings concerning the proposed preliminary budget for the General Fund of Southmoreland School District for the 2019-2020 fiscal year in the cafeteria, Southmoreland Middle School, 200 Scotty Way, Scottsdale, Pennsylvania, beginning at 7 p.m. local prevailing time as follows. On January 10th, 2019, receive additional budget information and possible draft proposed preliminary budget without voting therein, in addition to regular January planning meeting and special meeting to fill board vacancy. On January 17, 2019, received draft proposed preliminary budget and preliminary voting related thereto, in addition to January regular business voting meeting. On January 24, 2019, vote to approve posting Act 1 proposed preliminary budget and advertising therefore for adoption on February 14, 2019, including the ability to seek a real estate tax rate increase for the above fiscal year to exceed the Act 1 enhanced index for this district of 3.1%, either to be approved by voters in a referendum and/or the school district seeking an Act 1 statutory exception to the above index from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, known as PDE, or alternatively voting to opt out of the Tax 1 preliminary budget process and limiting any potential real estate tax rate increase to not exceed the enhanced index and certify the same to PDE.
Have a motion? Mrs. Rhodes, second.
Second.
Mr. Fry. Roll call.
Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Beistel.
Yes.
Mr. Carson.
Yes.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith. Yes. Mrs. Love.
Yes.
8 members voting yes.
Personnel, high school head baseball coach.
The board is asked to consider authorizing administration to post and advertise for a high school head baseball coach. Qualifications are listed.
Motion? Mrs. Rhodes, second. Mrs. Smith. Roll call?
Mr. Beistel.
Yes.
Mr. Carson.
Yes.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith. Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
All members voting yes. 8 members.
Track coach resignation.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of the resignation of Josh Pajak as an assistant track coach effective immediately and authorize administration to post the position.
Motion. Mr. Beistel, second.
Second.
Mr. Fry. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carson.
Yes.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith. Yes. Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Beistel.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
Motion carries. All members voting yes.
Sabbatical.
The board will be asked to consider a full-year sabbatical for Johan, SES teacher, for the restoration of health beginning December 18th, 2018.
Motion? Mrs. Rhodes, second.
Second.
Mr. Beistel, roll call, please.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Beistel.
Yes.
Mr. Carson.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
Motion carries. All members voting yes.
FMLA.
The board will be asked to consider an FMLA for Abby Cesario, SES teacher, beginning approximately January 29th, 2019, for an 8-week period to approximately March 29th, 2019, with no break in service.
Motion?
Motion.
Mr. Beistel, second.
Second.
Mr. Fry, roll call, please.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Beistel. Mr. Carson.
Yes.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
All members voting yes.
FMLA.
The board will be asked to consider the approval of an FMLA for Kelly Durr from approximately March 21st, 2019 to June 6th, 2019 without a break in service. Mrs. Durr is an autistic teacher, support teacher at the primary center.
Motion?
So moved.
Mr. Beistel, second. Mrs. Rhodes, roll call, please.
Mrs. Rhodes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Alt.
Yes.
Mr. Beistel.
Yes.
Mr. Carson.
Yes.
Mr. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Love.
Yes.
All 8 members voting yes.
Long-term substitute.
The board is asked to consider the approval of Tina Gower as long-term substitute for the remainder of the 2018-2019 school year at a salary of $44,727 less $5,000, which equals $29,727 prorated for the 100 days which remains in the year, which equals $21,358.60, which is the remainder of the 2018-2019 school year.
Motion? Mr. Fry, second. Mrs. Smith? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Love?
Yes.
All 8 members voting yes.
Resignation of a custodian.
The board is asked to consider the resignation of Sue Ullery, custodian, with the last date being January 2nd, 2019.
Motion? Mr. Beistel, second. Mrs. Rhodes? Roll call, please.
Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mr. Beistel? Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
All 8 members voting yes.
Bus drivers?
The board is asked to consider the approval of 2 proposed new bus drivers recommended by Quest Coach Quest Transit, Francis J. Yulren and Terry L. Yunkin. Clearances are current.
Motion?
Makes a motion.
Mr. Polakowski, second. Mr. Fry, roll call, please.
Mr. Beistel?
Yes.
Mr. Carson?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes? Yes. Mrs. Smith? Mr. Earl?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
All 8 members voting yes.
Citizens' comments? Motion to adjourn.
I just, before we adjourn, I just wanted to publicly say thank you to Mr. Bentz for his many years of serving us on the Southmoreland School Board. He was always very thorough and fair in his decision-making. He is a man of integrity and served this district with fidelity. So again, thank you, Mr. Bentz, for your service.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mrs. Smith. All in favor? Second. Mrs. Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
You also.